I'm Theresa Carbrey, Education Director for New Pioneer Co-op, and I'd like to welcome you to New Pioneer Presents Explore Ethiopian Cuisine. This is a special day today. I have with me Poppy McLeod,
Hi.
who's also famous for being on the New Pioneer Board of Directors. And Poppy is preparing some Ethiopian food right here as we're watching. Poppy, what have you got in this pan?
Well, this pan I have Injera. It's a flatbread that's like very common in Ethiopian cooking, and as you see here, I have a platter of them I've already prepared, and when we get finished, we'll have mounds of food placed on the Injera, and you use them as a utensil to actually eat the food with. So it looks like this one's about ready. Should we try to take it out?
What are the ingredients for Injera?
Injera in authentic Ethiopian cooking is a fermented flatbread that's made with a grain called teff. And teff, in fact, is available at New Pioneer. To adapt the recipe for United States kitchens, I've used here a combination of self-rising flour, whole wheat flour, and the interesting ingredient, club soda, which gives the bread a more spongy texture and the little teeny holes that are in there to help it absorb the sauces of the food.
And you don't turn these?
No, you just cook them, and they are like a crepe, about that thinness of a crepe, but as you can see, they're more flexible than a crepe, so they should be rather doughy. And you just cook them on one side and you don't brown them, and they're like a pancake. When they get all the little holes in the top, they're ready, and you take them out and pop them on your platter. So here I have taken a basket and covered it with these tea towels and then put the injera on top, and I've been to some Ethiopian restaurants that's how it's served.
So even in Ethiopian restaurants in the States, they don't give you your own plate and your own fork.
Right. Right. Everyone eats from a central platter. Some restaurants I've been to, actually, they will give you your own stack of injera, and you use those to take the food, and then as you use your stack up and as the piles of food go down, then you can eat the injera that's on the bottom.
And part of good manners is to never drop anything.
Right, and eating only with one's right hand is good manners as well. So.
Good. Well, what are some of the characteristic flavors here?
Well, I have here the list of spices, or not the list, but the collection of spices that I'm going to use today to flavor the food that gives it the characteristic flavor of Ethiopian food. So first we're going to talk about hot pepper seasoning, and there are something like about a dozen different ingredients that go into this seasoning. So in this bowl,
will be a dry powdered.
No, we're going to end up with a moist paste by the time we finish.
Paste.
Yes.
Okay.
So in this bowl we have whole seeds, coriander, peppercorns, fenugreek, whole cumin.
Fenugreek are these funny little ones that are shaped kind of like a dice.
Yes, yes, and they have a wonderful fragrance to them. And so we're going to take those seeds and toast them, and then once we've toasted them, we'll cool them completely. Grind them either in a mortar and pestle, if you like to do that, or in a spice grinder. Then I have this set of ingredients, and this is about a whole cup of paprika. I have used Hungarian sweet paprika, and the pepper, I have about 3 tablespoons in here of crushed red pepper. And we have we have our black peppercorns there, and so that is, and there's some salt. I have reduced the amount of salt that the recipe called for. The recipe said something like 2 tablespoons of salt, so I cut that in about a half or a third. I don't like quite that much salt. And there's some ginger, allspice, also more ground cinnamon, and I think that's about it. Yeah, and so we'll toast this as well. And then I'll take some fresh garlic and onion and dice these or mince them. Then once I have that all together, I'm going to put all of those in a blender with about a half a cup of dry red wine and about a half a cup of water, and blend it all together. And then I'll put it in a pan and simmer it and allow some of the moisture to be evaporated. And we end up with a paste that looks like this.
So the toasting
powerful.
Toasting of the seeds would bring out those flavors,
yes.
And then the wine would add a certain amount of
Yes,
body.
yes.
And then when you, almost like you're refrying beans, that
Yes,
would
it does have the consistency
pull it all together.
of almost refried beans, but it's a very nice paste. And then once you finish that paste, you put a thin layer of olive oil on the top to keep the moisture in it and add further flavor to it. And I like to use an extra virgin olive oil.
So this is pretty fiery hot.
Yes, it is. So, yes.
You will have to be careful as you see how hot we like it.
Yeah.
Do you like it pretty hot?
It depends on what day you catch me. So, and this the Ethiopian word for this spice mix is berbere. So it's characteristic. There's also recipes I've seen that do end up being a dry powder where there's not the liquid added. I tend to like the paste, so I've used that.
Does each household have their own interpretation of this?
Yes, yes, yes.
Sort of like curry, it could
yes.
be
And in
adjusted.
fact, I have encountered in preparing for this show, I encountered 3 different recipes for it, and I tried them, and this one was my favorite. So,
Good.
yeah. So the other spice mixture that we're going to use is a spiced clarified butter, and the ingredients that go in here are about a teaspoon of turmeric, an inch piece of cinnamon stick, 3 or 4 whole cardamom pods.
Yes, cardamom is so yummy.
Yeah, it is. And
So exotic.
whole cloves.
You can see the cloves here.
Again, more minced onion and minced fresh garlic and grated ginger root.
And be careful with that turmeric, because everything turmeric touches turns gold.
It
Turns
certainly
to
does.
gold.
It certainly does. So what you do is I've taken here a pound of unsalted butter. I find that many of the recipes I've encountered for Ethiopian food do tend to use a lot of salt, and I'd like to reduce that amount of salt. So I've used a pound of unsalted butter. I melt the butter first, and then once it melts and starts to boil and there creates a white foam on the top, then I add all of those ingredients to the butter and I leave it simmering on the lowest heat possible, uncovered, for about an hour. And after that process, the milk solids will fall to the bottom of the pan. And what I will do, I've prepared here a bowl, and over the bowl I have a sieve that's lined with a double layer of cheesecloth, and I'm going to strain the clarified butter through that cheesecloth, and that removes the milk solids, and you discard all the whole spices. And this mixture will keep in the refrigerator for several weeks, and if you strain it, in fact, 3 or 4 times, it should keep for a few months in the refrigerator or even at room temperature. So would you like to...
So you've gone ahead and simmered the spices in
Yes,
this.
it's been simmering this morning, and we're going to strain that. And we're going to use this right away today, so I'm going to strain it just once. But if I were going to keep this around, I'd strain it for a few more times to make sure the milk solids are out of it, which is what will turn butter rancid. So we can get rid of this. Just not drip that. So here we have the 2 mixtures that give this characteristic flavor to Ethiopian food. I should say that for people who are not familiar with Ethiopian food, probably the closest equivalent might be Indian food. If you like Indian food, you'll probably like this food. You may, if you're very familiar with Ethiopian Indian food, you'll notice that a lot of the ingredients are the same. The particular mixture and proportions of them and some of the techniques of mixing them together are a little different. So it doesn't taste exactly the same as Indian food, but if you like that cuisine, you'll probably like this. So what I'm going to prepare today are 2 dishes using these 2 spices. What I have here are brown lentils that I've cooked, and they're nice and hot. And I'm simply going to mix in some of the clarified butter, and I'm a little fast and loose with the measurements here, but I think that's maybe about a 1/4 cup of this clarified butter. I'm going to stir that real well. And you'll notice that the lentils, I've cooked them long enough so now they're forming a pasty-like consistency, and you do find that the pulses or legumes that are served in a lot of Ethiopian food tend to have that consistency. It makes it very easy to pick it up with the injera. So I've stirred that around with the clarified butter, and now for the brave of us, I'm going to add some of the pepper.
Okay.
And we'll see how well we can. And here I'll add about a tablespoon, maybe that's about a tablespoon and a half of this. And I have here about the lentils I started with are about 1 cup raw lentils.
So you just simmered the lentils in water, and really the flavor is going to come from the flavored butter and from the spice mix.
That's right.
Tell me, is there very much meat presented in Ethiopian cooking?
Yes, there is. I myself don't eat meat, so I haven't brought any today. Doro wat is a popular Ethiopian food that I've seen on every Ethiopian menu I've ever been to. It's a chicken stew, and the chicken is fried in the clarified butter, and then there's onions and garlic and tomato added to that with this spice mixture, quite a bit of it, so it tends to be hot. And the chicken is stewed with boiled eggs, and it's served that way, and it's cut into pieces right up on the injera. One of the things I like about Ethiopian food, it is the way it's served and the dishes there. It's a good food for vegetarians and non-vegetarians to eat together, because each person can choose what part of the meal they prefer to eat and still eat together and not feel as if you have separate dishes that you're eating. So what I'm going to do now that I've stirred this all together is put a nice pile of this on our injera. I'll make a couple of piles so we'll be ready to eat that. So that'll be nice and tasty. And then the final dish that I will prepare is I have some vegetables that I have steamed. And heat these a little now. And what I've done with these vegetables is simply, I started out with steaming them. And I have here new potatoes, broccoli, cauliflower, and carrots. I like that particular combination. You find that commonly in Ethiopian food. These are hearty vegetables that stand up to the sauteing and absorb the spices very nicely. And I simply took these vegetables and I cut up some onion and sauteed the onion in the clarified butter, and then I added the vegetables in the butter and onion mixture and sauteed all that together. And we have here these spiced vegetables that have been cooked in that butter, and they're very delicious as well and very simple.
So you cooked the onion in the spiced butter.
Yes.
And then you added the slightly steamed vegetables?
Yes, and I steamed the vegetables for perhaps about 20 minutes. It's best to add the broccoli last. It tends to steam faster than the other ones and get kind of wilted, so you want the vegetables to be nice and still somewhat firm, that bright green broccoli color. And you simply have it sauteed and heated up. Again. Yes, and put that up on the injera with the other dishes that you're serving. And you pick that up with the bread just like everything else and eat that. So let's put some of this up there. Oh. Okay. So we have the spiced vegetables, the lentils, and other dishes that are commonly served in Ethiopian restaurants would be some kind of greens. Collard greens is very common. Chickpeas with various spice mixtures, and other kinds of lentils. I've here prepared brown lentils. Red lentils are quite common as well. The final thing I'm going to add to the platter today is simply some fresh salad. And the salad that I've made is a very simple one. I've taken romaine lettuce. That's one of my personal favorites. And put this in a bowl first.
So in the country of Ethiopia, they prefer to work on sort of on a flame, or do they prefer to bake things? You've mentioned sort of working with the stovetop here.
Right. Yes, I would imagine that most of the cooking might be done over flame. I can't say for sure because I've not been to Ethiopia, unfortunately. Some of the I know in Indian cooking, a lot of the ovens tend to be clay ovens to make that tandoori, and some of those kind of techniques would be applied perhaps in Ethiopian cooking as well.
So if you weren't able to make, or weren't quite ambitious enough to make your own injera, perhaps one could substitute chapati, which would be an Indian kind of flatbread. Or would there be other ones?
I think that any of this food would go very well with most of the breads that we know from Indian cooking. A chapati, a paratha, naan, those kind of breads that are made to go with spicy food and food that's very substantive, like this food is. So if you cannot make or cannot find the injera, I certainly would recommend still try to make this food and these spices and try a different kind of bread with it. It's the injera here, because of the flour that we use in this country, doesn't have that much of a flavor. It takes on the flavor of the food that you serve it with and those particular spices. So yeah, I think some Indian bread would be good.
It's not really that, in the function it's similar to a tortilla, but not really in flavor or texture.
Yes, yes. And unlike a tortilla, you're not going to put your entire meal inside the tortilla and eat that, but you break off pieces of the injera and roll up a morsel of food and pop it in your mouth.
Well, we hope to see you do that yet today.
I've been practicing. What I've done for the salad is I'm going to make a very simple dressing with the salad. And this is quite good. I've had in Ethiopian restaurants, just some olive oil, freshly squeezed lemon juice, and I like a lot of lemon juice, so that's almost juice from one whole lemon, and some black pepper. And preferably if you have the freshly ground black pepper, that really makes the salad stand out. And if you do like salt, add a little salt to it as well. And just toss that together. You might also add some scallions or some red onion to this recipe. It's very simple. And this goes on top of the injera with everything else. And you eat it with the bread with your fingers like all the other ingredients. So I have tomato, cucumber, and romaine lettuce in this version of the salad.
So is this the sort of presentation one would find in a good Ethiopian restaurant?
Yes, the first time I had Ethiopian food, this is almost, with a couple of dishes are missing, but this is what I had the first time I went. I was very surprised about the salad, trying to eat that with this bread in my fingers. So with a lot of practice, and I have been practicing. So this is our meal.
Okay, so we'll be right back and show you how to eat this injera and Ethiopian cuisine. So let's try some of this Ethiopian cuisine.
Okay.
Poppy, show me how it's done.
So what I've done is I've made a couple of extra injera. The way you'd be served in a restaurant is to have your own plate of a few extra besides the ones that are on the platter. So let's try. You tear a piece off, remember, with your right hand.
It would be impolite to use your left.
Yes, and I have a piece of about that big, and I'll grab a mound of these lentils and see how much heat I put in them. And so you make a nice little morsel like that you pop in your mouth.
And the same kind of approach with the vegetables.
Yeah.
How fiery is it?
If you like heat, this is the thing to eat.
All right, and
Well,
so
that
what
butter is really, really good.
the butters? Well, there's such a mix of spices and such a range. What might a person be served for a beverage?
Well, I brought sparkling cider for people who prefer non-alcoholic, and it's more dry cider. And then I've also brought some Gewürztraminer wine, and that wine particularly is good with spicy food. It's from Fetzger in California, and I learned about the affinity of that wine with spicy food when I had the opportunity to visit the vineyards in California a few years ago. So I do recommend that with a spicy food. It was particularly recommended with Indian food at the time that I sampled that wine. So I said, well, it probably would go well with Ethiopian food as well. In Ethiopia, they have a sweet honey wine that they serve with their foods, and you'll see that in Ethiopian restaurants. And the bottle, or it comes in kind of oval-shaped bottles, and it has kind of a honeycomb patterning on the bottle as well. So it's very distinctive, and it's very sweet wine.
So our sweet sparkling cider might not be too far
off,
distant.
that's right.
Of course,
That's
this is
right.
effervescent. Do
Yes,
they have
it is.
Ethiopian beers? That might be.
I was just going to say some beer would probably help wash this down pretty well too. So yeah.
Good. Well, that was a tasty little bite. I plan to keep on trying here and work my way all around the plate.
Try some of these cucumbers with the olive oil and the lemon juice.
Very, very good warm Poppy.
That's very good. I like that combination.
Well, I'd like to thank Poppy McLeod for being my guest today as we explore Ethiopian cuisine. My name is Theresa Carbrey, Education Director at New Pioneer, and it's been my pleasure today with New Pioneer Presents. Thank you for joining us.